On my second video on C++ decision statements, we're going to do if, then, else. Except in C++, you don't use the word then because that would make you type 4 extra characters. And we're also going to do nested if statements. Now this is in C++ console environment, which is typically what you see in first semester programming classes.
All right, so this is part 2 of videos on if statements. And in part 1, I went through some simple if statements and comparing strings. In part 2, I'm going to go through these two examples, if, else, and nested if statements. And nested if statements is the one that actually gets us to a decent solution for the problem we're trying to solve. Now I'm going to open up this folder for Visual Studio, and right here you can see the Visual Studio solution. That's the file I need to double click on. This is my solution folder, and that will launch Visual Studio and open up my project file. Now once I'm in it, you can see we're doing the same thing. We have the same inputs, temperature and humidity, as the first example, and they are floating point variables, so they can hold a floating point number. No, I don't want to back up and collaborate right now. Thank you very much, Visual Studio. We'll worry about that another time. And float is for the humidity, and then we're going to do CNs to get that, and then we're going to evaluate if temperature is greater than or equal to 90. So the format of an if statement, once again, is lowercase if, open parenthesis, a condition with the relational operators. In this case, we're looking to see if the value of temperature is greater than or equal to 90. And if this evaluates to be true, it's going to do this set of code right here, everything within those braces. And if this condition evaluates to be false, it's going to jump down to the else and do this line of code. And the same thing for humidity. Now, a couple things I want to point out to you with these if statements is if you didn't have the braces and you only had one line of code, it would actually be okay. But because what happens is if this is true, it does the one line of code, semicolon. If this is false, it's going to do that one line of code, semicolon. Now, if I try to do more than one line of code, I'm setting myself up for some errors. So I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to add some other couts here so you can see that. All right, so I've added these other couts, but when I typed this second cout and I pressed enter, the C++ Visual Studio indented it to this level to try to show me that this line of code has nothing to do with that if statement. So since I do not have the curly braces, this if statement starts here and ends right here. Now, a mistake you would make as a programmer is to tab that in so it looks like these two lines of code go with the true condition. And then if you tab this in, visually it looks like these two go with the false condition. But you see right here it's complaining about the else because the code we really have is this. Here's the beginning of my if statement, here's the end of my if statement. Then we're just doing a cout no matter what. So this else is just hanging out in the breeze and it's not matched up. And it's not even going to compile. I have an error right there. To fix this, I need to put these in curly braces. Let me get this fixed up right here. And it's going to complain when I do the extra curly brace, but I will clean up this one right here. But this is what I want. This is now all of this code. Oh, I lost my close parentheses. There we go. All this code is now part of the true condition, and then we should do the same thing for the else. And let me get that cleaned up and get rid of that. And let's do a little bit of formatting. There we go. So if I do it this way, if you use the braces, even if it's only one line of code, like I did right here, you will never get yourself into trouble. It is just a good habit to follow. So all of this right here shows this code has been changed. I'm going to hit my Save All button. Save All is my friend in Visual Studio. You don't ever want to do Save As. And I want to run the program. So let's come up here to Run Local Window Debugger. It's going to run it. And I can type in my temperature. Let's say it's 75 degrees and 45 degrees humidity. And it says, it's not too hot, go outside, not too sticky, it is a nice day. So it has run through the code. Now let's step through that with the debugger. I'm going to come here to line 28 and click in the gray margin and put that red circle, and that is a breakpoint. My code will run normally until it hits this line, and then it will pause before it runs this line of code. So let's run it again. And if I put the breakpoint there, then I don't have to step through doing my inputs. Let's say it is 95 degrees and it is 45 degrees humidity. So now you can see my code has paused right here by that yellow arrow. It has not run this line of code yet. And if I hold my mouse over temp, we can see it has a value of 95. And if I hold my mouse over humidity, we can see it has a value of 45. So now I want to run my code one line of code at a time. So I'm going to come up to the toolbar and say step over. I don't want to step into the underlying code behind this. So I'm just going to say step over. So it ran this condition. It's going to evaluate it as true or false. Temp is 90. So that is greater than or equal to 90, so that's true. So now it's going to do these two couts, and if I say step over, it does these two couts. Since it was true, it's going to skip over the else and go to my second if statement. Humidity is less than 70, so this condition is going to be false, so you see it jump down to the else, and it's going to print out not too sticky, it is a nice day. And then if I tell my program to continue, my output window is still visible until I press any key to continue, but we've got a contradiction here. It's hot and not a nice day, stay inside. And then based on humidity, it's too sticky. It is not too sticky, it is a nice day. So we really need a nested if statement to fully understand this logic. So this is an if else. If this condition is true, it runs all the code inside of these braces. If this condition is false, it jumps down to the else and runs all the code in these braces. So this is the if. Now, normally we'd say if, then else, but in the C series of languages, we don't use the word then because it's implied. If this condition is true, it's going to run this code. Else, it's going to run that code. So that's the if else. And what I want to do now is move on to the nested if example. Of course, I needed to pause the video for a second because there's a jet taking off right over my house. I don't know how much my microphone is picking that up, but I'll just pause until they're on their way. So I'm going to make sure I've saved my code, save all. I'm going to close my project and go back to my desktop and go up a level. And this time I want to go into the project that is nested if else statements. And once again, I'm going to double click on the Microsoft Visual Studio solution to launch the project. And here it is loading up. So it's the same setup. Inputs are temperature and humidity, and we're going to see if it's a nice day or not. So this part of the code is identical. This part of the code is identical, but let's look at the if statements now. And let me see if I can get all of this on the screen. Maybe, yes, just can fit it with the last close bracket down there at the bottom. So just got the whole thing on the screen. So we have an outer if statement checking for temperature, same as we've seen before. if the temperature is greater than or equal to 90, it's going to do all the code between these braces right here. So this is the true part of the statement. Else, it's going to do all of this code down here. That's the outer if statement we're checking on temperature. Then inside the true part, we have a second if statement to look at humidity. So now we can tailor our messages based on temperature and humidity together and get more intelligent messages. So if the temperature is greater than 90, it's going to jump down to here and do the second if statement. And if the humidity is greater than or equal to 70, it is a hot and sticky day, and it's not a nice day. Otherwise, it's just hot. If this condition is false, it will come down here. Now we have a chance for it to be a nice day. If the humidity is greater than 70, it's sticky, but it's not too hot. If the humidity is less than or equal to 70, and then we finally have a nice day. Well, we can step through this with the debugger so we can see how it works. I'm going to put a breakpoint here on line 27, and I have saved all my code. I hit that out of habit, and then I'm going to run it by hitting that green triangle. Bring it onto the screen, and let's just go for broke. Let's go for a nice day, 75 degrees, 45% humidity. Now, it has hit my breakpoint right here. It has not run this line of code yet. If I look at the value of temperature, we can see it's 75. If we look at the value of humidity, and all I'm doing is holding my mouse over these and getting a tooltip, it's 45 degrees. So this condition is going to be false. So as soon as I say step over, it jumps down to the else, and the first line of code inside the else is the second if statement. And this condition right here is going to be false. So it's going to jump to the else of the second if statement. So this is the cout it's going to do. So it did that cout. I'll tell my program to continue. We can look at the window, and it said it is not too sticky, not too hot. It is a nice day. Let's run through this one more time, but this time let's put some different data. So this time it is 95 degrees. How come I keep hitting 6 when I try to type 5? And it is 37.5% humidity. Why not? It's a floating point. Now I've hit my breakpoint. So the first thing it's going to do is look at the temperature. And since the temperature is greater than 90, this will evaluate to true. So I'm going to hit step over. So now it is in the true part of the outer if statement. So now the second if statement is going to run where it's going to compare humidity to 70. And that is false. Humidity is not greater than 70. So it's going to jump to the else of the inner if statement. And you can see it's going to say it is hot but not too sticky, not a nice day. And that's the cout it did. We can see it right here. And then I can tell my program to continue. Basically what it's going to do now is it's going to skip over this else because it did the true part. So if I say step over, you see it jumps all the way to the end of the program. Then I can tell it to continue. I can bring up my console window and close that window if I need to. But that is nested if statements. And once again, one of the ways to keep this logic as clear as possible is always to use those open and close braces. Visual Studio will pretty much indent your code automatically, but you can always, if it's not indenting it, make sure that the code inside of the true part of an if statement and inside of the false part, the else part of an if statement, is indented. All of this code is the true part of this if statement. So it is indented. All of this code is the false part, the else part of the statement. So it is indented. So everything looks real nice. We can see right here I made a change that has not been saved. I can hit Save All, and then I can click here on the red circle on line 27 to turn off my breakpoint because I don't need that anymore. And that is nested if statements. So if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. And I'm going to do one more video in this series where I do a series of nested if statements, like the typical example you see in first semester programming classes is the user types in a grade and we want to see if it's an A, B, C, D, or F. So I'll write an example showing you nested if statements to determine which value in a range is being triggered. But if you like this video, please like and subscribe. Thank you very much, and take care.